Hello and welcome back. Matt from Gallantway here, and today we are talking about advanced growth using MER. In this, we're going to break apart MER into three separate components. We're going to look at new customer MER, we're going to look at blended MER, and then we're going to look at incremental. And we're going to pick apart this and apply it in a way that makes sense in order to help you identify where to grow and how to grow profitably. So let's get into it. As a reminder, MER is essentially your total revenue divided by your total marketing costs. So whether that's advertising and agency fees, all of that kind of bundled in together. And we know that MER makes up both new customers and returning customers, which is great. Therefore, we know that if your ad spend stays the same, then we can increase our email and returning customer rate, then we're going to improve our MER. Makes sense, we all get that. What we want to start to do now is to separate new customer revenue from retained revenue. And we do this because we know it's very difficult to scale email marketing. It's not like email addresses are magically going to appear in our CRM platform with our investment into new customer acquisition. So typically for a commerce brand, that's kind of Google, Facebook, TikTok, Snap. And generally speaking, we want to make sure that retained customers have very little association with that investment in ad spend. And we want to do that because that's how we can help identify what parts of our ad investment is working most effectively. Make sense? Cool. It's pretty straightforward. So we've created a metric called new customer MER, so NMER, which is essentially your new customer revenue divided by your total ad spend, and that's what equals the NMER. It's important that we start to measure this because, as I said, it helps us identify what parts of that new customer acquisition investment is resulting in real new customers. You can get this by looking in Shopify and analyzing the new customer data, or in Google Analytics by analyzing the new customer first-time order data. One consideration here, and this is typically what we see, is that more customers typically results in a lower new customer MER. And you can think of it this way. As you scale your campaigns, you've had a lot of success on Google on a specific type of campaign. As you scale that shopping campaign, for example, it eventually reaches a point where it starts to tail off, where conversion rate starts to dip. And that might be because you've reached everybody in that specific target market, in that location, or maybe there's just not enough volume, not enough searches, or whatever it might be. So eventually that conversion rate will tail off, and that will start to affect the efficiency. That'll start to bring down the number of new customers per dollar ad spend. So that's why we start to see a tail off as you grow. It's very common, and that also highlights the need to continually be testing, experimenting, and improving on the efficiency of your current campaigns. But generally speaking, that's how we want to look at new customer MER. So keep that metric in mind. The next part, what we want to do is we want to take that NMER and rename it. We want to call it a blended NMER, because essentially all we're doing here is looking at the average of the total ad spend. So we're taking all the new customers and we're dividing that by the investment across all of them. And that's great. It gives us that number. It gives us 2.1 or 1.9 or 4.0 or whatever it is for each new customer. But that's not very helpful. What we actually want to understand is which parts of that investment are the most effective, right? What are the campaigns that are most effective? What are the audiences or platforms that are most effective? We want to understand that marginal impact, that incremental, where that next dollar becomes very effective. So that's why we look at a metric called incremental MER, INMER. And essentially, it's calculating the incremental revenue, the performance of each additional dollar, or extra little bit in our case, divided by the incremental ad spend. So I'll say it again, the incremental new revenue divided by the incremental ad spend. And once we start to understand that metric, then we can start to identify if it makes sense to continue scaling, or if it makes sense to stop scale down, or look at reallocating that investment. So the core things to take away from this is that your new customer revenue divided by your ad spend is your NMER, which is actually a blended MER because it's the average, right? It's that total new customer investment divided by the total ad spend. And the other key thing to look at is our incremental, right? The next dollar that we spend, that extra little bit that we're spending that we need to calculate, that's what we're really looking for. This is the part where, if you can deliver good performance across an incremental MER, then you've got efficiency to scale your brand profitably. In the next session, we're going to actually look at this in a lot of detail, and we're going to go through an example. Hopefully you found that useful, and hopefully you're learning a bit about how we approach brands. Thanks.